Today, I want to talk about the financial data analysis and early warning of the critical point from the critical slowing down. In my presentation, first, I will show the data I have selected, give you a brief introduction of the data, plot the data and visualize them. And in the second part, I will introduce the approach of the analyze the data I have selected. This approach is mainly about what characteristic I want to analyze the data and what kind of the method I use to process data. At last, I will use the method that I introduced in the second part to process the data I have selected, get the result, verify the method, and draw some conclusion. The data set I have chosen is the stock price data of the Google company. Google is one of the greatest technical companies in the world, and it is also my favorite technical company. So I choose the time series data from the Google. And in chart 1 in this slide is the stock price change, which is shown by the linear scale of the Google from 2010 to 2020. I generated the data through the mathematics. Through the data in chart 1, we can see that the price fluctuation and the tendency is kind of no linear change. Significantly in some part, the data has a catastrophic bifurcation. That is why I think that is a complex characteristic. For the financial data, I also do the log transition, which can show by the log linear scale in chart 2, as we taught in class before. Chart 3 describes the data difference day by day. From this chart, we can see the price fluctuation in a clear way. In the chart 4, I draw a linear fitting line, which is the yellow dashed line, which we can see this is for the price of data. And the chart 5 represents the difference between the fitting data and the real data. And in the data selection and visualization part, what I want to show is the summary of the data I chose, and the interpret the data is in a brief way. In the second part, I will show you what I want to do in analysis of the data. I mainly want to find the critical point in the dynamic system. Well, first, why the detect of critical point of the time series data? Critical point means that the suddenly collapse or abrupt transition from one state to another is usually difficult to reverse. The small disturbance can have a big effect. Pattern makes a critical point important to study. For the stock market, critical point means the sudden increase or decrease for the stock price, which means that knowing where the critical point happened can help the investigator better organize their investing strategies. However, critical point usually happen without any period stock price increase or decrease, which means that the critical point is very hard to detect. So it is important and necessary to find a method to detect where the critical point happened in dynamic system. And second, critical slowing down method just offer us a way to detect the critical point. From the article which Wesley and Judy mentioned, the critical slowing down as early warning for one set of collapse in mutualistic communities, according to the method. Before the critical point, systems tend to recover slowly back to the equilibrium upon a random disturbance. This phenomenon of the critical slowing down appeared to the genetic for a wide class of the local bifurcation, at which the current equilibrium state of the system loses stability before being replaced by another equivalence state. Critical slowing down may be captured by two simple statistic signals in the dynamic of a complex system: increased variance and raising correlation. This signal can be used to detect the proximity of the system to a critical point and serve as an indicator of loss of the resilience, or more broadly, as an early warning signal for the impending catastrophic transition, which means that we have a proximate way to predict when and where the critical points happened. Here, I will give you a brief introduction of the two signals that use in critical slowing down method. The first is the increase of the autocorrelation factor. Slowing down causes the intrinsic rate of the changing a system to decrease, and therefore the state of the system at any given moment should become more and more like the past state, which means that autocorrelation increase. Autocorrelation increase can be measured by the regression model of the first function, which the Leonard in the article Early Warning of the Climate Tipping Points from Critical Slowing Down Compare Method to Improve Robustic mentioned, and the second function is also he is also mentioned in his function, which represent the autocorrelation factors or autoregressive coefficient close to the article point. The correlation factors C, which is tends to 1, and increased variance in the pattern of fluctuations is another possible consequence of the critical slowing down as the critical transition is approached. Critical slowing down could reduce the ability of the system to tracking the fluctuation and thereby reproduce the opposite effect on the variance, which means that the variance increase and the system approach critical point. In this part, I will use the critical slowing down method to predict the critical point of the Google stock price dataset. Firstly, I filter the data and select a part, which we can see this graph from the April 1st to November 1st in 2014 has a critical point, which is showing that in the chart, a sudden shift of the stock price from the original data. And secondly, calculate the ACF and the variance of the data, see the change of their value. At last, check the value and compare the result critical slowing down phenomena. Additionally, in the paper Early Warning of the Climate Tipping Point from the Critical Slowing Down, compared the method to improve the robustic. Leonard mentioned that critical slowing down method sometimes offer us a failed alarms of the critical point, which I will try to explore the reason in my research later. Here is the reference of my presentation. Thanks a lot for your listening. Thank you.